Good morning. This is Steve Atarian and Dr. Stephen Wilson here at Four Winds Coffee and Tea, also known as the Christ Center in Grand Junction, Colorado. We are recording this hangout on air to help draw out some of the wonderful knowledge that's in Dr. Wilson's brain and mind, and putting it on video and sharing it with the world. So thank you, Dr. Wilson, for being with us today. Our conversation today is around sugar. I'm just going to let you open it up because it's a subject everybody in America should have your perspective on.
Well, thank you for the invite here today, Stephen. It's always a joy to meet with you this early in the morning. This sugar issue, I can't find a person on the planet that thinks it's good. And yet we consume incredible amounts of sugar on a daily basis. It's literally hidden in different languages on every bit of food that we try to buy. So it's just impossible to get around. You just need to be careful. And if it's our job to maybe guide people a little bit today, we'll walk them through some things as we go. But I'm going to suggest a book which is one of the most thrilling bits of information I've read in some time. It's written by Dr. B.J. Hardick, Kimberly Roberto, and Dr. Ben Lerner. Two of these doctors were Olympian doctors. So they're into performance. And anytime you enter the game of Olympics, it is all about winning. And so is life. Life is all about winning. When we present our bodies and our minds, we are hopefully presenting something to somebody. Someone says, gosh, because of your health, I'm interested in listening to you. And so I've found some very interesting approaches that I believe is a universal trait that we look at people and we form an opinion very quickly is to, if they're not healthy looking, then do they treat their business like they treat their body? Ooh. And I think that would be a good thing for all of us to wonder about in terms of what we're doing. So the traditional method of making our bodies go in the morning is our cycle kind of goes like this. We eat a heavy meal at night loaded with protein. It takes about 7 hours for protein to digest in the gut, and there's an enormous amount of energy that's produced in that. The kicker here is the human body is really interesting, and that's when it cleans itself. That's the janitorial time. And along with that, it is the pivotal time to burn fat. So people need to kind of come around to this thought that if they could do this correctly, they could lose weight at night. So what you kind of have is a picture of your mom cleaning the kitchen and you're coming right in behind making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and making a mess. So she's got to redo the whole thing. Now, so if you don't sleep well, you wake up in the morning, little time to get to work. So you slam down a cup of coffee, a stimulant.
Maybe some dessert for breakfast.
Maybe some dirt and get a bagel. And all of it's loaded with sugar, and it's a stimulant, and there is nothing of value in it.
Nothing nutritional.
No, there's no value in it, period. It might give you a kick, but the side effect of it. So these guys laid out in their program, and by the way, let me mention the name of this book. It's Maximized Living Nutritional Plans. It is a must-read for everyone. Absolutely will change their life. But they list the 10 top reasons to avoid sugar. First of all, sugar is a primary dietary cause of obesity.
I'm looking over your shoulder. It says the obesity epidemic.
Yep.
It doesn't say obesity. It says the obesity epidemic.
Sugar causes hormonal and metabolic imbalances. We just begin down. Sugar is your fast track to diabetes. And we have diabetics. I remember as a kid growing up, now I'm in my mid-70s, and no one talked about diabetes until they was 50. I mean, it was just, but now we have cases of diabetes. I think the numbers are like 1 in 9 young people. are pre-diabetic. I think that number rings the bell. So I'll list all of these diseases come from. Sugar increases the acidity of the body. Now, where there is acidity, there's always two things. One is there's always fatigue, and there's always disease. Disease will not live in an alkaline mode. So if you're eating a bucket load of sugar, then all you're doing is creating an environment for disease to move into.
And you use the term an alkaline mode. I'd like to kind of redefine that as an alkaline environment.
Okay.
Because if the blood is alkaline, therefore it doesn't allow the transition of disease through your system. If your system is alkaline, it doesn't allow growing and seeding of disease within the system. Versus alkaline mode versus the acidic mode, most Americans are acidic, and we can have a conversation another day. But
well, they're only acidic because of what they eat.
There's really only the two things that affect us: the outside environment and the inside environment, and I guess three things are our DNA, our genetics. So we have those things available, as we can test. If I eat this, I feel this way. If I drink this, I feel that way, and we can test it in our own system how this works. So I'm gonna snuggle in a little closer.
Okay,
to Steve,
I'm starting to love you more all the time. Sugar leads to heart disease. Heart disease is, if not the #1 killer in the world, it's in the top 3.
It is.
So we're beginning to look at this thing in high cholesterol issues. Sugar is a major cause for inflammation. Now, that's an interesting statement that they make, because where there's inflammation, that's the environment that disease lives in.
And pain.
And pain. But this inflammation is it is where disease lives. So when we talk about creating an environment, that environment is inflammation. So you go right down through this. Sugar is an anti-nutrient. Now, yeah. So here you have physicians that are working with pristine athletes and trying to get them to perform better for a longer period of time and have the recovery rate come into play very quickly. And all at once, our principal deterrent that we should be dealing with is taking sugar out of our menu. So how about this one? Sugar promotes cancer. So the top 3 diseases in the world today: heart attacks, right? Cardiovascular issues, cancer, and diabetes, all are this one little doorway called sugar.
Wow. And
it's nasty.
I recently, and I put it in the meeting notes, that we as Americans back in the turn of the century were consuming about 5 pounds of sugar per year. Now we're consuming well over 150 pounds per year as a person. And it's not sitting at the table in the morning putting spoonfuls of sugar, which I remember doing as I was a kid on my cornflakes. It's not taking spoons and spoons of sugar and putting it in our coffee and putting it in. So that does contribute to our high sugar intake. It's the sugar that's that the companies that are putting into the description on the box that says ingredients. The other day I saw pure cane juice as an ingredient. That kind of sounds like sugar cane. Maybe that's a sugar product that they're finding a different way of calling it a sugar product. High fructose corn syrup. From my understanding, high fructose or fructose corn syrup was developed in Japan, and it has 2 wonderful attributes. One, there's 0 nutritional value to it whatsoever, and 2, it turns off our satiety, satisfaction hormones and responses in our body, so we never feel full. So you say the word. Satiety. Satiety, thank you. So how many products are we consuming on a daily basis that are corn, have that ingredient
laced with sugar?
Well, and laced with sugar. I mean, I was looking at a bag on the end cap of the grocery store, and it was this great granola, all natural, made in Boulder, Colorado. It had to be natural, right? Granola, and I turned it over, and the first ingredient was oats, and the second ingredient was sugar, and the third ingredient was pure cane juice.
In Boulder, mind you.
Well, I mean, of course they don't have chemicals, but they do have other things. I'm amazed at how and because of my awareness and my relationship with you, and because of my taking and caring about taking Nefesh products and caring about my health, I now am aware of sugar. I read the ingredients, and sugar is in the top 3 or 4 of almost everything I was buying on a regular basis.
Well, let's get into this for just a little bit. They have a very interesting count. There's somewhere between 1 and 2 teaspoons of sugar in your blood, max, at any one time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay. It's not a lot of sugar in the form of glucose. The average American consumes 53 teaspoons of sugar per day.
Wow, I heard it was 32. 53 is even higher.
You're a little bit dyslexic. So that equates to a 5-pound bag every 10 days for every man and woman in America. Now, I want to take you to a very interesting thing to me. And I've been wrestling with this and doing my work in trying to put together a package to where we can deal with this. Sugar is the worst form of energy we have. And I want to get into the ATP story for just a moment.
Okay.
So if you do not have energy, which is produced through and via ATP, then we're going to use sugar as a substitute, because we've got to get out of the house and go someplace.
Right.
So sugar produces, let me use carbohydrates, which converts to sugar. 1 molecule of carbohydrate produces 4 molecules of ATP.
Okay. And ATP is adenosine triphosphate. We've talked about that on an earlier video. Please go back and look at that. It is the chemical reaction within the cell that creates energy that our bodies need, and we don't use sugar. We use ATP for energy. Sugar is just one of the fuels, and as Steve is talking about, one of the worst fuels.
Okay. Protein is a horrible. It's a waste of using the gas to build the energy, but it too produces
kind of like ethanol.
kind of like, yeah, okay. So 1 molecule of protein produces 4 molecules of ATP. And here's the fun part. Fat, good fat, not fat that's been beat up, but really good fat from nuts and certain foods produces 129 molecules of ATP per molecule of fat. So our most important form of energy comes from fat. But if you're using an adulterated fat, something that's been processed and beat up and heated and all that, it is toxic to the body. So once we get this little thing in storage and in our mind, then all at once, when a person takes a teaspoon of sugar and they've got their blood full of sugar already, glucose, then something happens to that. And people need to understand this one principle. Your body is really, really, really efficient, and it never makes a mistake. Never.
Much like its creator.
Much like its creator. So when you put something in it that's loaded with sugar, the body looks at it the minute it gets in your mouth, then off it goes, and it begins to be parsed into 2 different forms of sugar. One is a fructose sugar that goes through the liver and comes back in the form of triglycerides, and that stuff is stashed around your belly. And the other part goes through the glucose process. The pancreas looks at it. We begin to introduce one of the hormones now called insulin, and it looks at it and it tries to stash it someplace also, deal with it, try to get it into the cell for burning. But in essence, now we're finding that it moves past that process. It moves into a thing that is really, really ugly, called amyloid beta plaque. And that is particularly interesting because now we've introduced one of the most interesting languages on the planet, which is MCIs, which is mild cognitive issues. So that plaque is setting up in the brain, closing the capillaries to where we can't get nutrients and oxygen into the brain, and people are entering the world of dementia.
Well, and that plaque is also the buildup of plaque in the heart that's been attributed to cholesterol for all of these years. Cholesterol has been contributed to fat, and fat has been contributed to a survey back in the 50s, a scientific experiment where they looked at the two causes, fat and sugar, and they actually demonized fat instead of demonizing sugar way back in the 50s. But we're learning that was probably not the right hypothesis to follow out of that.
It's amazing how science can make mistakes. It always fits an industry, benefits an industry. Imagine it. But let me just touch on that cholesterol for just a moment. A guy by the name of Dr. Matisse Rath in 1992 argued in Europe that it is not cholesterol that causes heart attacks. It's rather inflammation of the artery wall. And that inflammation is due to lesions on the artery wall. And the lesions creates the cholesterol to patch it up or you'd bleed to death via scurvy. So they see the evidence of all of the cholesterol and say, oh my gosh, it's got to be the cause of heart attacks, when actually it's trying to keep you from killing yourself.
But that's still plaque buildup on the inside of the arteries. It's God's beautiful invention here healing itself.
Mm-hmm.
And, the same thing is happening in the brain as the capillaries and arteries we're stashing away that plaque because the body's got to process it. It's got to put it away somewhere.
So think about this. It's kind of an interesting dilemma that Western medicine falls into, is if you have something developing in the brain and it takes blood pressure to get the blood into that small capillary, then a person walks in, he's a little senior, and he's got high blood pressure. So all at once, the doctor says, if I lower your blood pressure, we don't have enough pressure to feed the brain, so you're going to go away mentally. Or if we keep the blood pressure up, then we're putting your heart in a position of disease, but we got blood going to the brain. Which do you want to do? Well, let's see. I think I'd rather forget who I am. So lower my blood pressure. And those are the dilemmas that we're dealing with in America. And at the heart of this is sugar, because we are using sugar as a stimulant. And therein lies the heart of how we as Americans deal with this one principal thing. That a body has to have energy, and he has to have oxygen, and he has to have an elimination system, meaning the skin, the kidneys, and the liver, and the digestive tract, and the respiratory system. All of these things have to be functioning, and then the next critical aspect of good health is rest. If we don't have those four items, you are not a healthy being.
Okay.
So
let's just touch on that again. Let's just so we have the fuel, the intake of nutrition. We have rest. We have elimination.
We have oxygen cycle.
Okay. I wasn't necessarily putting it in order.
No, okay.
But why don't you go over the four again for all?
Energy, oxygen, elimination, and rest. Good sleep at night. Everybody functions better when the brain is rested. The tissues, the muscles, the organs are at peace. So until that takes place, and people getting a fundamental understanding that they need to eat properly at night so they can sleep all night and not have this issue of getting up 4 or 5 times to relieve themselves. I don't know how any couple stays together with the man getting up to relieve himself 4 or 5 times because of prostate issues, which is about inflammation. So if we could get that little thing in order and get people to understand that, then they get up, they would be rested, they could have a proper breakfast, breaking the fast at night, eat correctly, and their energy level would go straight through the ceiling. Their cognitive skills would increase. And what is the end result of that?
a more wonderful community we live in.
You bet. And excuse me, a host of studies in prisons talk about feeding prisoners differently. And if they take the sugar out, they reduce the anxiety and the crime by 37%.
Wow.
And it's just because people are anxious, they're stirred up. Sugar is just the bits. So if we're suggested to you, Stephen, would you make this trade for more energy, losing some weight, better sleeping conditions? Would you make that trade if it cost you less money?
Yes.
How quick is that? And now we have to have the right answer. And now we go back to this ATP story. We need to figure out a way to get a hold of that fat. And let me get a little funny here. So we have blamed fat as the issue when it's the principal cause of energy, right? So if we went downstairs right now, all of the college kids coming in here are getting skinny lattes.
Removing the fat from their latte.
Yeah. Now, if they moved over just a little bit, you see, as they process that milk, the more of that fat they take out, they add sugar. And I got a person to sit down and we were talking about this in another coffee shop, and I got the bottle of skim milk from the counter. It was 1% fat. So they've taken everything that builds energy, and there was 12 grams of sugar per serving. And he never seen that before. I got the half and half out for him. Half and half has 2 grams of sugar. And it's demonized, and yet in half and half, even though the homogenation process and all that kills everything, still it only had 2 grams of sugar. So it is amazing what we have done to ourselves to not lose weight. We're doing exactly the things that put it on. And we call them, you see these young women, and let me read you this article here a little bit. Soda makes up 10 to 15% of teenage girls' caloric intake.
Wow.
And if you'll notice, our young women, teens, they call them muffin.
Close it like we have good connectivity, even though the warning signals say we do not have good connectivity.
Well, let's hear for connectivity. If people will follow us, we're going to take them through how to build energy, how to lose weight, how to understand fundamental physiology. They don't need to know all of this Krebs cycle thing. I've done some seminars in front of MDs and PhDs, and they say, if you entertain the Krebs cycle, we're walking. It is a dastardly bit of biochemistry. So we're not going to get into that. We just want people to understand that it takes certain elements in the body to build the energy, and you will become so efficient.
Yeah, and I
so
think
healthy.
I'm on that road, and I enjoy the health that different. When I first met you, I was over 300 pounds. And,
No.
Yeah.
You were a cutie pie.
Yeah. Living in have more and enjoy the fresh products. Go climb. Here to talk about. We're here to talk about how America can be healthier, and really how God created an amazing world, an amazing creature, and God the Creator has blessed us with the ability to heal ourselves. And that's what we need to focus on more than, I'll just say it, today's modern medicine and the insurance system that we're in. If we can heal ourselves the way God created, we will need doctors to repair us when we're broke, but boy, we won't need them to see us every day for inflammation and disease and cancer and other things. So at that, we are at 8:30. Steve, any follow-up final words?
Well, I think that in the coming weeks, if they'll follow us on our blogging that you're teaching me how to do, we're going to walk them through some incredible science and some incredible finds that will make everything that we're talking about right now become very easy for them to handle and accessible. One of the biggest issues today in America is it's not convenient and it's difficult to know where to go and buy foods that are clean in terms of how they burn and efficient and are loaded with dense molecules of energy. We're going to go through that, Stephen.
Awesome. I look forward to it. And I know some people are out there going, but I like my skinny latte and I like my bagel in the morning. Once you start eating healthy, you really will feel a difference in your energy level. And though you may miss that occasionally, I personally can say that I am healthier and I enjoy eating healthy and being healthy, and I don't miss my skinny latte. Have a great day. God bless.